There can be few things more frustrating than inconsistent contact, and hitting the ground behind the ball or hitting the ball fat would certainly fall into that category. Today I'm going to share with you the causes of the fat shot and drills you can use to fix that problem. There are three things that would affect the location of where this club strikes the ground. So if you're hitting the ground before the ball or hitting the ball fat, you have a problem controlling the bottom of the swing arc, the swing's low point as it's often referred to. Those three things that affect low point are important to understand. I'm going to run through those things now, and then we'll get into some drills you can do to fix this issue. The first thing to pay attention to would be the location of your weight throughout the swing. Where I move my mass moves the bottom of the swing to some extent. So if I shifted my weight back and moved as far as I could to my trail side and stayed there, I would be much more likely to strike the ground further back. Equally, if I moved my weight more forwards and it was excessively to my front side, I'd be more inclined to strike the ground further forward. So the location of your weight at any point in time in the swing affects the bottom of the swing, and at impact, that problem would manifest itself in a way where most golfers have too much weight on their trail side still and would hit the ground before the ball. If that sounds like you want to pay attention to the weight shift. Where is your weight at impact? Having at least 80 to 90% of your weight on your lead side by the time you hit the ball would be the first thing I would look at if you're struggling with fat shots. The second part to pay attention to when it comes to controlling low point would be the swing's radius. The radius of the swing is really your lead arm and the shaft. It creates this straight line that comes down to the ground at setup. The best players, as you would probably recognize, maintain this radius. They have some shaft lean when the club hits the ball, and that allows them to hit down slightly, controlling the low point of their swing, hitting the ball first and then the ground second. Poorer players who struggle with this fat shot would struggle to control the radius, meaning they'd swing back and for whatever reason would start to uncock their wrists prematurely, making the arc of the swing too wide. The radius of the arm and the shaft has lined up before I've reached the ball, and by the time I reach the ball, the club has overtaken my lead arm. I'm flipping, as you could say. Now, that flip causes the arc to be too wide and causes golfers to strike the ground before the ball. There's the fat shot. So you could have your weight forward, as we talked about already. This would be a positive thing. You could have your weight forward when you hit the ball, but if you're not managing the wrists and the radius correctly, you could still be casting and flipping, and I could still hit the ground before the ball, even though I've got my weight forward. So that's an important definition. There's a distinction there to make between having just the weight forward and having the weight forward and controlling the radius. And the third factor would be the swing direction, meaning the more I swing to the right as a right-handed golfer, the more inclined I would be to hit the ground before the ball. That would be a problem if you suffer with fat shots. You may fall into this category. Equally, the more the club swings towards the left as a right-handed golfer, the further forward my low point would tend to be. So the direction of your swing plays a role in where this club hits the ground. I think the most common issue of those three that I see is poor radius management, poor control of the wrists and the shaft in the downswing, causing this flipping, which ultimately leads to fat shots. So we're going to take a look at how to fix that particular problem using the Hack Motion wrist sensor and some specific drills that you can do. When I set up to the golf ball, I have a small amount of shaft lean here, and using the software here, using the Hack Motion software, can see that there's a very small amount of extension in my lead wrist. I can see there that there's around 22 degrees of extension. And the poorest golfers, when they hit the ball, would reach that point of extension prematurely in the downswing, letting the club head overtake, and now this lead wrist is extended 37 degrees. I've increased the amount of extension. That would happen in golfers who hit the ball fat. So the best players would do the opposite. Instead of extending the lead wrist more at impact, they'd actually take this lead wrist from that 22 degrees of extension, and when they hit the ball, they'd have less extension. The wrist would be more flexed or bowed than it was at setup. So if I mimic my impact position there, we can see that I go from 23 degrees of extension where I started to 13 degrees as a pose. And I could even push that further if I was really trying to exaggerate that feeling of shaft lean. The more shaft lean that you can create at impact, the more likely you are to get better ball striking and compress those iron shots. So the trick here is to learn how to take your standard grip and setup and increase the amount of flexion in the lead wrist, reduce the amount of extension in the lead wrist, and get that perfect ball striking that you're looking for. I have two of my favorite drills to share with you to help eliminate fat shots. The first one would be to take an alignment stick and just place it along the grip of your club so that you're artificially extending the length of the club that you're holding. So hold the stick and the grip together. What you'll get is this angled stick just running along your lead side. The stick's just touching the left side of my body. And as I swing back and swing down, what I'm trying to make sure that I do is keep the stick away from my side. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to increase the amount of flex in the lead wrist and push the handle forward, effectively building in more shaft lean. So as I make these small practice swings, I get to experience the sensation I need in my wrists to ultimately exaggerate this feeling. There's no doubt that if you struggle with fat shots and you have poor radius management with your wrists, you're going to need to feel something here through impact that's quite extreme, quite exaggerated. So I get a lot of players to do these short follow-throughs where there's very little to no release of the club at all. They're pushing the handle forward, hitting the ground, and stopping in this reduced follow-through position where the focus is on no releasing of the club. And you'll see that because I'm holding this stick, if I was to release the club prematurely or excessively, this stick would strike my side. I wouldn't be able to continue with the swing. So this is a great one to get started. If you're not sure what this should feel like, you could place the stick down the back of your shaft. You could make practice swings in your home right now. Just do dry drills with no ball, striking the ground, but keeping the stick away from your side via that change in these wrist bends. And when it comes to an actual drill you can do hitting the ball, I love the towel drill that you may have seen before. Take your golf towel and just fold it up so that it's in a small rectangle like so. And then we're going to place it on the ground about one grip length behind the golf ball. Now, how close you place your towel to the ball, or how far away you place your towel from the ball here, is going to change the difficulty of this exercise. But let's start out with effectively one grip length back from the ball, just to start with. This is a 7-iron, and I'm going to go ahead and hit some shots where I'm trying to miss the towel both in the backswing and the downswing. If I was to make the error that we've spoken about here with the wrists and uncock them prematurely, start casting, the radius of the swing is going to get too wide too soon. I'm going to strike the towel on my approach to the ball. So I'm looking to avoid the towel both in the backswing and in the downswing. That was a pretty nice shot, well struck, tiny little push draw, straight down the middle of the driving range. The towel is still in place, meaning I controlled my low point effectively. So that would be an excellent exercise, and one of the great things about this drill is that you can progressively move the towel closer and closer to the ball in order to make this exercise more difficult, reduce the margin of error. So if you find this too easy with a full grip width behind the ball, or grip length behind the ball, start to reduce the distance between the towel and the ball in order to make the drill more challenging. And taking a quick look there at the hack motion wrist data that can show us exactly what the wrists were doing in that swing, it confirms what I was saying about the movement of this lead wrist. I started out in a small amount of extension. There's that 22-degree number that I was talking about previously. And actually at impact, that measurement was 0. I'd lost that 22 degrees of extension by adding the correct wrist movement to be able to produce the shaft lean at impact that I was looking for. If you're looking to eliminate fat shots, try these drills, work on your wrist mechanics. And if you're interested in learning more about how to control the wrists, check out the link in the description of this video that will take you to more wrist training videos.